Hey everybody, this is Tom with Talent Guitar Works, and today I've got this SR 805 Ibanez bass neck on the bench, and you'll notice the fretboard's already removed from it. Rick mailed this down to me from Minnesota, and he stopped in the shop when he was in Florida and talked me into working on his guitar necks. And I said, okay, not a problem, I could do that. He had taken these to a couple other people, and they said there was nothing they could do for him. Now, as always, I searched the internet for a replacement neck because it is a bolt-on. And if it's a bolt-on, it may be cheaper to buy a replacement neck than to go ahead and just repair the neck that's on it. Well, there are no replacements to be had. I called Ibanez, I looked all over the place. The only 805 necks that were online were ones that were also twisted. So Rick told me that there was a hump on the bass side at the 6th through the 10th fret and a dip on the treble side. So that was the only clue I had. Now, what causes twists in guitars, especially this one, if you could see, is a 3-piece mahogany neck. So this should have been glued together to where the grain fought against each other to keep it from relaxing where it would twist. And they did, they glued it up the correct way. So the puzzle started to expand a little bit, and I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to find. So I put my heat blanket on the neck yesterday, and I removed the fretboard. And this is our fretboard, and it came off nice. Now, usually when you heat a fretboard off, if they're really cheap inlays, you'll burn them. They'll melt because they're plastic. You may put some burns on the fretboard, and it doesn't look really good. Well, this fretboard did really well. One of the reasons is it's Brazilian cherry, it's Jatuba. But I found some of the other things that were incorrect with the guitar neck and with the fretboard when I removed it. So on the fretboard itself, it specs out almost to a 9.5 radius. There's a problem with that. Right? It's supposed to be a 12. And it's not stable all the way up. When you start getting up the neck in some spots, you have a lot of gaps underneath both sides. Now somebody's going to say, well, maybe it's a compound radius. Well, it only is a compound radius if they went higher in the middle and lower on the ends. I don't get that part. So it's not a compound radius. The spec sheet says this is supposed to be a 12. So now our options go from not only do we have to remove a twist, but we have to deal with the foundation, much like a foundation of a house. Now, I told my customer, he said, well, what would you do? I said, well, if I told you I'm building you a house and the foundation isn't level, but don't worry, we'll get it right. Yeah, that's not a good thing. So I'm going to have to pull all these frets and refret it after I sand it out. And what am I going to sand it out with? I got a buddy over at Maximum Guitar Works that came up with this bad boy. This is a pneumatic straight edge sander with a 12-inch sanding beam attached to it. So we're going to make short work of this, sanding it out, and because of my labor fees, it's going to save the customer a bunch of money. So is this. This is my rudimentary neck and fretboard jig, and I just put it in one of my vices that are in the shop and lay it up, and I could double stick tape that fretboard there and it's not going to go anyplace, and I can put some dogs on it to stop it from moving around and get it done really quick. And on the fretwork, that's not a problem. I can put frets in all day long and do a ton of guitars. So one of the other things I found though when I took this apart, and I'm going to lay it on here so you can see it. All right, this is flat. This is not. This is bent right there. Now right to about there, and that's that 6 to 10 range where this truss rod actually has a bend in it. And I don't know if you could actually see it because it's very slight. It's only maybe half a degree. But over distance, it makes a big difference. If I was 1 degree off and I walked 1,000 yards, I would be 100 yards off at the end, right? So, same thing. This could have gotten damaged in shipping. It could have been damaged in installation. It could have got damaged after the guitar was built by somebody trying to torque on the truss rod and getting frustrated with it. I don't know, because Rick bought this guitar used. And like I said, he wanted to keep it. So now, what would I do if I wanted to get this guitar and the neck straight? Well, the first thing is I checked this neck out, and this neck is doing really well as far as being straight. I'm not seeing the problem being there. However, we do have a solution. I've got 2 carbon fiber rods that I'm going to put on either side of this truss rod that's going to stiffen this neck up and just tighten it up. It's not going to have the same span or range as it did before with the truss rod, because it's going to have to work against the carbon fiber rods, but they're going to keep it nice and straight and prevent it from twisting again under the string tension and the playing of the guitar. So that's what we're going to do with my friend Rick's Ibanez SDGR SR 805 neck. And when I tried to put this truss rod back in, and I screwed it to neutral. So if you're going to put a truss rod in the channel and it's dual action, what you want is where that wrench moves freely both ways. There's no tension on the truss rod. So when I started to put this back in to check it again, it confirmed, yeah, this thing is bent. It's binding, just trying to go in at neutral. And when I check it up here, it is favoring the right side. It's almost touching the right side of the channel. It's got about a 1/16 on the left side. So I'll be attaching the fretboard after I remove the frets to my buck that's in the vise, or my jig, if you will. And then I'm going to be doing some sanding on it. And what I'll do is put witness marks all over the fretboard with a number 2 pencil. And when the witness marks are gone, I will re-hoop it with my radius gauge and make sure we're in the right spot. So stay tuned, we'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Now I did my witness marks where I just took my number 2 pencil and went all on the fretboard. I had the air compressor running, so I didn't show you this baby in action. But this makes quick work of this fretboard job. I was able to do this fretboard in a re-radius from 9.5 to 12 in under about 15 minutes, which saves the customer money. Now, when I take this thing and move it in the vise, and we're going to try and get you a close-up here where you can see it. Now the radius hoop has no shadows under it all the way down the length of the fretboard, which is exactly what we want. We want that solid foundation to put our frets on, and then we don't have to worry as much about, oh, we're going to have high or low frets and have to do this or that. If the foundation is right, the house is right. If the radius is right on the fretboard, the frets are going to be right. So I'll be back after I press those in, and then we'll get back to the reassembly of the neck is going to come on another day, because I had to order a StuMac truss rod for this, because I asked him, I said, do you want me to try and straighten it, or would you prefer a new one? He said, well, let's spend the $12.71. They're not that expensive, and they do bend kind of easy, but I don't know if I can get that swoop out of it. That might have happened in shipping when Ibanez received those. But anyway, we're going to get this Ibanez back in playing order and get it back in his hands real quick, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, this is Tom and I'm back. I forgot all about these babies. These are 2 carbon fiber truss rods, if you will, right? Carbon fiber rods that we're going to put in this SDGR neck. Now how I started that was I marked the position And generally, you want one of these carbon fiber rods on either side of the truss rod itself. And it's going to stiffen this neck up, and it's going to give the truss rod less of a range, but it's going to make it incrementally more accurate, if that makes sense, because there's actually more tension on it, or there's a force resisting against it from going too far. So how I started out was I drilled 2 holes the same diameter as my truss rod or carbon fiber rod bit for my router. And I've got my brass bushing in here that fits in the STUMAC truss rod template. Now I centered it over that, and I made sure I'm at the right depth on the router now, and I'm just dropping that in the slot to make sure it's at the right place. And I clamp this end down. This end we've got double stick it tape, and this is where I'll be controlling it. And if I come down here and drop in the second hole, let's see if I can get this, there it is. I'm in the second hole with the double stick. So basically, I'm going to put some blocks down here to stop the neck from trying to move left or right on me. I'll be holding this while I'm bringing the router down. Now, I've also marked the limits of where I want to go with the router, and what I'm going to do basically is lay these rods inside the slot where they're supposed to go, and then I'm just going to take a piece of tape and go across up here at the point of termination so I don't route the slot too long. Now, one of the other things I had to consider was this is a wizard style neck. It's an Ibanez, so it's real thin. So I didn't want my tall truss rod material to use this, the carbon fiber rod, and this one is the taller one. I had to actually wait until this one was no longer back ordered. And if I put them next to each other, we'll see if you could see the difference here. So I wanted to go with the shallowest carbon fiber rod I could, and you never want to cut these with power tools. If you do have to trim them up, use a hacksaw or a handsaw to do that, and just get the right size. You won't have to trim anything. So these carbon fiber rods, once I route these 2 channels, will be ready to go, and they're going to keep this neck from twisting this way and from overcompensating in both these directions. So I'll be back once I have these routed and in, and I'll let you know what we're going to do next. For the Elite, this is Chris Mitchell's guitar. It was howling before. We shielded the whole inside of the body cavity for both pickups, the neck and the bridge, with copper foil tape. I shielded the inside of the control cavity on the back, and then most importantly, when I initially wired it up, I wired it with 1 meg audio pots for the 2 volumes. It was still screaming. I went and looked at the other schematic for the Stratocaster, and it showed 50K linear pots. Then I called my buddy Ken Armstrong, who's always willing to help out with this stuff, and he said, absolutely, 1 meg's too much. How the guitar worked before with 1 meg audio pots in the 2 volume positions, I'm not sure. But the mid-boost now has a 250K audio, and the 2 volumes coming off the pickups and going to the switch are 50K linear. So, and that's about it for this one. Like I said, I'm not a great guitar player, but I love working on these things. And it's a really good feeling to make sure that this 1983 Elite Telecaster with these active P90 pickups is still playable, and we can keep this thing playing and the way it was supposed to be, and not by rewiring it just so it works. So this is Tom at Talent Guitar Works. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comment section. Bye. All right, we're back. And I've already routed the channels, and I've temporarily set in the 2 carbon fiber rods that are going to go on either side of that truss rod, and they're going to add to reducing the stress on this neck from right to left so it doesn't twist, and also the back bow and all that other good stuff. So I set my router, I had a variable speed router, I set it on a lower setting, not because the blades were wide, but because I wanted to have more control over it, and I didn't want it to jump and put a gouge on the side of one of the channels. Lots of times when you start that router at high speed, that's what it'll do. This is a soft start router, but I was able to route it on low because I really couldn't get this thing clamped down the way I wanted. And I didn't videotape me routing it because, hey, guys, I got to do the safety third thing and say, hey, I've got to watch what I'm doing when the power tool's on. I can't be paying attention to the camera. So in the future, I'm going to have one of my buddies that will videotape it for me, but I'm going to put this up until the truss rod comes in, and then when that's done, we're going to go ahead and get this glued back together and refretted and back on its way to Minnesota. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out, and this is kind of a trick on these. Do you see how shiny that is? All that's got to come off, that shiny stuff. That's where it's been crystallized glue that's been on the back of this, and it reduces the capillary effect that the new glue will provide, bonding with the wood, and it could pop the fretboard off. I've seen it happen before. I've done it myself. That's how I found out about it. A lot of times you find out from the mistakes you make in this business on what not to do again. But anyway, I'm going to get all that residue from that high glue or whatever glue it was on there off there before I apply the new glue to put on here and before I glue in these carbon fiber rods, and we'll be good to go, and we could get this back to Rick and he can start playing that SDGR again. So this is Tom from Talent Guitar Works. Stay tuned for the next one, and remember, only half my ideas are any good. You got to decide which half.